which in turn is contributing to the extreme earth and climate changes that are having such a profound effect upon our planet at this time. We often get numerous comments from viewers and occasionally from our subscribers that earth and climate changes are just part of the natural process of a world that is continuously changing. And this has been true in some respects throughout our existence. But what we are now experiencing across the globe in the way of extreme weather events and also catastrophic earth changes, they go beyond the scope of natural occurrences. They are becoming unprecedented in nature. In one of our recent videos, we presented an article from National Geographic, which indicates that scientists now believe that climate change is causing the poles to shift at an accelerated rate. But if you really take the time to analyze the data and study the facts, wouldn't it make more sense to conclude that it is actually the shifting poles that are causing the sudden change in the world's climate? You might ask, how is that so? And so we would ask to you, go back and look at the history of the world. There has in fact been a number of pole shifts throughout the existence of this planet. And just because the world is now inhabited by humans who are living in a modern technological age, well, this doesn't mean that a major pole shift is outside the realm of possibility in our lifetimes. It is, however, conceivable that we are now in the initial stage of the pole shift that Edgar Cayce envisioned, and that which Albert Einstein had acknowledged would occur. So we can speculate as to why we are witnessing these sudden changes on our planet and what might be causing these changes, but the facts do speak for themselves as to exactly what is happening at this time. Some of you keep insisting that we show irrefutable evidence that the Earth is being turned upside down, and that a rogue planet in our solar system is responsible for the Earth shifting on its axis, which is a belief now held by the Inuit elders who have observed the skies and the sun for a generation. Then there are others of you who claim that we have been saying for the last 15 years that Planet X would be coming. Well, all we can tell you is that we have been waiting for 3,600 years for its return. A planet which is 5 times the size of Earth, that moves in a retrograde orbit. This isn't going to be the type of planet that travels at a rapid pace across our solar system. Then again, if the planet were visible to the naked eye, would you then believe? We will tell you this, that the world is beginning to see a period of great tribulation, and the arrival of Planet X may come much sooner than any of us would have imagined. Now, we are not trying to be fear-mongers or alarmists. There are already too many of them out there. We are just trying to present common sense evidence to the public. So here are some of the things we know for sure. Earth changes are increasing dramatically worldwide. In fact, since 2012, earthquake and volcanic activity has risen on a phenomenal level. Volcanoes are approaching 40 eruptions per day. That's right. Hard to believe, but true. Earthquakes in the Ring of Fire are more frequent and are occurring in unusual areas where people are not accustomed to them. So first off, let's examine the details of the unprecedented earthquakes happening in 2016. The earthquake activity along the Pacific Ring of Fire has been nothing short of unprecedented. From coast to coast, there have been a surge of activity that earthquake researchers are taking note of at this time. On February the 16th of 2016, a report from stuff.co.nz reported a 6.0 magnitude earthquake, which was felt as far south as Dunedin. Now, coincidentally, this earthquake was shown as a magnitude 5.9 on the EMSC website, which would be different from what was shown on the GeoNet site. There have been a number of recent earthquakes taking place in New Zealand that range in magnitude of 4.3 down to 3.6. And then, of course, the 6.0 that was just recently recorded. But of all the earthquakes 3.0 or greater that were shallow in depth, this is a spike in activity that is more dangerous because the tremors are happening near the surface. The earthquake activity that has been recorded on the RSOE website is from the last 2 days alone, which is also very alarming. With the Alpine Fault overdue for a major quake and the amount of activity taking place at the moment, we feel it is wise for New Zealanders to be ready. We should also note that California is continuing to experience tremors with some rare earthquakes recently, along with several smaller earthquakes all taking place within the last few days. Now, moving down to South America, there has been a spike in earthquake activity in the past 24 hours, measuring in the magnitude of 4.8 down to 3.6. Now, this is a signal for pressure building up along these plates, and that pressure has to release at some point in time. If you take a look at this chart, you will see that fireball events were recorded as in the hundreds per year in the year 2005. By 2011, there had been over 1,500 reports of fireballs. And since that time, it has dramatically increased to where in the year 2015, there were over 9,000 reports of fireballs. Now, it's interesting to note that the frequency of fireballs has increased by 120% between the years 2013 and 2014, and has risen another 20% between the years 2014 and 2015. Now, this is a significant increase, and it should be generating a lot of attention, but if it is, then it's being done very quietly behind closed doors. Now, looking at NASA's data month by month, we see that the fireball frequency is most concentrated in the months of August to December. However, the numbers for June and July are also increasing significantly, suggesting that the area of space from which asteroid and comet debris is reaching Earth, and consequently into which the solar system is moving, is increasing in size. NASA has also published data for near-Earth asteroids, or NEAs, discoveries since 1995. Their data shows a consistent increase in asteroid numbers from 1998 through the year 2013, and significant increases for 2014 and 2015, which shadows the big increases in fireballs that were observed over those 2 years.
And through all of our history and science books, we believe that life was created by a comet or an asteroid hitting the surface of Earth. In the same way, it also wiped out the dinosaurs.
On a long enough timeline, the Earth will certainly be impacted by an asteroid at some point in the future. In the recent past, there has been major impacts on the order of a small nuclear weapon being detonated in Siberia. This was the Tunguska event.
A 50-meter wide comet fragment exploded and flattened about 80 million trees.
For 1999 RQ-36, the target of the OSIRIS-REx mission, we've determined that there's on the order of a 1 in 1,000 chance of this body hitting the Earth sometime in the 22nd century. It's one of the most potentially hazardous asteroids in the solar system.
The greatest threat to our existence isn't climate change, but asteroids, which is why the next 72 hours will be very interesting for our planet, because right now, an asteroid bigger than the MCG is heading towards us at 13 meters a second.
Are you serious? Are you literally serious? Asteroids! Well, there are people freaking out right now, folks, that September 23rd or 24th, the Earth is potentially going to get hit with a massive, catastrophic, apocalyptic, cataclysmic asteroid deep impact. Now, wait a minute. Everybody calm down. Calm down. Go ahead and make some more coffee and just relax.
We're going to die. We're all going to die!
Why we're hearing this? There was a guy who put out a video a few days ago, the fact that he had a college buddy of his who now works for the Foreign Ministry office in Kuwait, who is saying that there is significant concerns of asteroid impact. Now, I know this. I reported it earlier, I forgot when, a few days ago, that China discovered an asteroid. They call it 2009 ES. It's about a mile wide, and it is headed in our direction. They didn't tell us when it was coming, how close to the Earth it would go by, what other debris is flowing along with it, but they do mention it as a concern. They even call it a killer asteroid. Now, what we've understand is, I went to NASA and checked it out. NASA does recognize this asteroid. They confirm it exists, 2009 ES, but they're very vague in the information. They don't give us any approximate time of arrival or going by the Earth or how close. Keeping that one kind of quiet. I don't know why. Now, here's what I do know. We have a, according to NASA, the JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, is seeking a robotic spacecraft development for asteroid redirection mission. Get this. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, has issued a request for a proposal seeking a design, development, and build of the robotic spacecraft that will capture a multi-ton asteroid boulder from deep space during the first segment of an agency's asteroid redirection mission. The RFP is open to the 4 industry partners that previously completed their conceptual designs of the spacecraft. ARM is a 2-part mission that will integrate robotic and crewed spacecraft operations, improving the ground of deep space to demonstrate key capabilities needed for the NASA's journey to Mars. So the robotics segment of the mission completed its key decision point B review in August, which served as an authority of the JPL to proceed with its next procurement phase. There are 4 vendors that are trying to come up with this spacecraft. They want this robotic segment, or ARM, to be able to demonstrate some advanced high power, high throughput solar electric propulsion. Now, NASA is admitting, matter of fact, in the year 2021, they want to launch this space probe. They want to send it up to a major asteroid, pick a boulder up off the asteroid, and then ride alongside the asteroid, hoping that the gravitational pull will be just enough to nudge the asteroid in a little bit, redirecting it so that when it goes by the Earth, It will not pose any threat. So obviously NASA knows there are certain asteroids headed in our direction. The Bible tells us we will have 2 deep impacts. That's not a fairy tale. This is a prophecy. It is going to happen. When, I don't know. But I have a feeling that the elitists do know. And matter of fact, they're building underground cities for the elitists to survive a catastrophic event. Even Jesus said there'll be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and distress of nations with perplexity, and the sea and the waves roaring, and men's hearts failing for fear, for looking after those things coming upon the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. When these things begin to come to pass, he said, look up, lift up your head, for your redemption is drawing nigh. Well, in Revelation 8, I'm going to come back to you here. There's an Armageddon office that, and I reported on this a long time ago. Back in January of this year, NASA Armageddon office aims to protect the Earth from the doomsday asteroids. The White House has sanctioned this Armageddon office. Its job is to check, to scour space, to go where no man has gone before, and to find the doomsday asteroids threatening the Earth. And you can know this, we will get hit. We will get hit twice. In Revelation 8, verse 8, it says, the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood. And a third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And the third part of the ships were destroyed. And a third angel sounded. There fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood. And many men died of the waters, because they were made bitter or poisonous from radiation from a deep impact. So there's going to be 2 of them. One's going to hit sea, one's going to hit land. They are going to happen. Here's the situation. We don't know the day, the hour when Christ is coming, and we really don't know, at least we don't know, us little people, we don't know when they're going to impact the Earth, but we know they're going to. And so does NASA, and so do all of the scientists. And little by little, they're leaking out concerns. And what's causing the heavens to shake? What's bringing this galactical belt of asteroids and meteorites? Is it Planet X? Is it NIBIRU? Is it the dwarf star? Is it planet number 9? Is it planet 7X? Call it whatever you want to. Is this what's going to bring about the doomsday effect? The world won't come to an end from both of the impacts, but you'll think it has. Are you saved? Trust me on this one. You don't want to be left behind. And we could have some deep impacts. Matter of fact, I believe we will have some deep impacts before Christ returns. This thing is getting close. And as far as this week, September 23rd or 4th, I don't think you have to worry about that. But you better get things right with God.
Hold that thought, Hazel! It seems as if an asteroid or some kind of meteorite has just hit ground right outside the Mark Twain chili cook-off. This should certainly spice things up a bit.
Is it coming? Doomsday? Well, yes, but not now. Okay, everybody calm down. September 23rd is here. And just like last year, there was a lot of panic and a lot of concern about a deep impact happening. There's been prophecies and different things. Here's what I want to tell you. We will get hit at least with 2 huge asteroids in 2 deep impacts, according to Revelation chapter 8. But we're going to get hit with probably several asteroids and meteorites of different shapes and sizes that are going to cause some apocalyptic concerns without question. Matter of fact, this is why the global elitists are building underground cities. They are trying to prepare themselves for the coming apocalypse. Now, you are going to see some things. Matter of fact, let me just tell you this. Right now, NASA says there are 1,730 potentially hazardous asteroids that they're aware of. And last night, there were 22 fireballs that were seen in the skies. And so we also know that there's an Armageddon office at the White House, and that Russia is working, their scientists working on a nuclear space technology to try to blast incoming dangerous asteroids into space and blow it into millions of pieces. We know that NASA's announced that in the year 2021 they're going to send up a space probe and go find one of the asteroids that they've identified that's still way out there, and they're going to try to grab a boulder off of it and then let that probe right along beside this asteroid, letting the gravitational pull nudge it off its track. We know that the Chinese have just announced last week that they've identified the asteroid 2009 ES, and they recognize, they call it's huge, and they call it a killer asteroid. So and here's what Jesus said about all these events. He was asked the question about the signs of the end times, and what will be the sign of your coming, the end of the world, and what should we look for? And there's going to be false Christ and false prophets shall rise, and there's going to be all kinds of wars and rumors of wars, and nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. But then in Luke 21:11 he says this, and great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines and pestilences, and fearful sights and great signs shall there be from heaven. All right? Fearful sights and great signs will be in the heavens or in space, and nothing could be more fearful than an asteroid on its way. Matter of fact, here's what Jesus also said, same chapter, Luke 21. He tells us in verses 25, he says, and there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea, the waves, roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. All right, so there's a whole lot of shaking going on. There is inbounding asteroids without question. But here's the good news. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. All right? So the more asteroids that are incoming, the more meteorites that are seen, the more fireballs that are in the sky, even when the deep impacts start happening, look up. The next verse. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. So look, you have nothing to fear if you're right with God, okay? But as far as today's September 23rd asteroid, it's nowhere on anybody's charts for an impact today of a biblical proportion, unless they know and they're not telling us. And I think I already suspect that they do know of asteroids and when they're going to hit, and that's why they're working feverishly. China, United States, and Russia working feverishly to figure out how to deal with what they can't deal with.
Release the meteor!
Release the meteor!
No way!
There is an asteroid discovered in December 2004 called Apophis, named for the Egyptian god of death and darkness. It was named only after its trajectory was identified to intersect that of Earth. Had that not been the case, we would not have named it Apophis. Could name it like Tiffany or something, or Bambi, you know, something not threatening. This one was headed towards Earth, Apophis. All right, once you discover an asteroid, you got to wait a little while to get enough of a segment of its orbit to calculate what the full orbit will be, to know if it will come in harm's way. So, we did that. We, the community. I wasn't the one. We got peeps who do this. Okay? So, we get the orbit. Turns out, in the year 2029, the month of April, the 13th of April, a Friday, Apophis will come so close to Earth that it will dip below our orbiting communication satellites. And it is the size of the Rose Bowl. It'll be the largest, closest thing we have ever observed to come by Earth. Now, of course, a much bigger asteroid took out the dinosaurs, but we weren't around at the time. So this is in the era of observing the cosmos with technology. This will be the closest, biggest thing we'll ever see come by. Now, the orbit we now have for it is uncertain enough, because these things are hard to measure and hard to get an exact distance for. The orbit is uncertain enough so we cannot tell you exactly where that trajectory will be. We know it won't hit Earth. We know it'll be closer than the orbiting satellites. There is a range, a 600-mile zone. We call it the keyhole. If the asteroid goes through the middle of that keyhole, it will hit the Earth 13 years later. It will hit the Earth. 500 kilometers due west of Santa Monica.
So it doesn't matter where it goes through that keyhole.
Now, that's if it goes through the center. If it goes through other places within that keyhole, then the contact point shifts further into the Pacific or closer towards North America. Or something, yeah. Yes. Okay? But if it goes through the center, it hits the Pacific Ocean, plunges down into the Pacific to a depth of 3 miles, at which point it explodes, cavitating the Pacific in a hole that's 3 miles wide, 3 miles deep. That will send a tsunami wave outward from that location. That's 50 feet high, 5 stories. Oceans don't like having holes in them. So, this 3 mile high wall does what? You say that so timidly, sir. Collapses. It's a 3 mile high wall of water. Thank you. Falls back into the hole, sloshing against itself with such ferocity that it rises high into the atmosphere and falls back down to the ocean, cavitating the ocean again. So now you make a cavity a second time. This cycle takes about 50 seconds. You can calculate it, okay? So here comes the first tsunami, and 50 seconds later comes another tsunami. So there you are on the beaches of Malibu. Tsunami comes in. Now, unlike the tsunami in Indonesia, which was one wave that went deep into the shore, this first wave needs a supply of water to exist, so that the next wave actually sucks back on it to create itself. So, this tsunami will only go in about 1/4 mile. So it only goes in 1/4 mile before it gets sucked back out for the next wave to come. Here's the problem. Whatever was there on the coastline is now brought back out to sea. And the next tsunami brings it back to the shore. All the $1 million homes in Malibu, they get taken out to the sea and then back. But this time they're in a slightly different shape, okay? And so what happens is all the artificial stuff, all the houses, the factories, they get churned into this ablative force that sandblasts the entire west coast of North America clean. So have a nice day for that.
But this big school. So
I'm sorry, I said 13 years after 2020, I misspoke. It's April 13th, 2029, and if it threads the keel, it will hit Earth April 13th, 2036. So it's a 7-year.
You're my lucky meteor.
In which a series of cosmic interlocking gears determine the movements of the planets. But we now know that the orbits of the planets are not as fixed as they appear.
It seems so steady. It seems like it is this clockwork, but there are ways in which it can be disrupted quite dramatically.
Even a slight change in the Earth's orbit could severely impact our ability to survive, since the position of our home planet makes it uniquely suited for life.
The Earth seems to be an ideal planet in terms of habitability because it lies at just the right distance from the sun, in which point liquid water can be stable on our surface. We can have oceans and lakes and rivers, and we think that water is really the key ingredient for life.
Earth is in that special zone. It's not too cold, nor too hot, it's just right. If we were closer to the sun, we might end up like Venus, a planet too hot to live on, with a temperature hot enough to melt lead. On the other hand, if we were farther away, we might be more like Mars, which is just ridiculously cold, and you can't support life when you're too far from the sun.
But what would happen if Earth's delicate balance were disturbed, so that it was no longer this perfect distance from the sun? Far beyond our solar system, there are planets wandering through the galaxy, not bound to the gravity of any star. Known as rogue planets, they were ejected from their birthplace by unstable orbits or cosmic collisions and sent on wild trajectories through the universe.
Essentially, a rogue planet is a planet that was originally in a different star system, and it was kicked out and is now wandering the cosmos, divorced from its parent star.
There's likely to be at least as many planets as there are stars. So we expect there's something like 100 billion stars in our galaxy, and so we expect a couple 100 billion of these rogue planets.
These rogue planets are interstellar nomads, cold, devoid of life, and careening through the darkest reaches of space. And many of them are likely to be giants, hundreds of times larger than Earth.
Right now, we're seeing more so-called Jupiter-sized planets than others. Based on that, you could expect an average rogue planet to be on the order of a Jupiter-sized planet, maybe less.
With billions of rogue planets in our galaxy, it's possible that one could swing through our solar system with monumental effects.
A rogue planet coming into the solar system will probably be moving at hundreds of miles per second.
It's possible that a rogue planet could hit the Earth directly, completely demolishing our planet. But a rogue planet would not even have to get near the Earth to create havoc.
The nightmare scenario is that one of these large rogue planets drifts right through our solar system and ends up disturbing the orbit of one or more of the larger planets. And because these larger planets, like Jupiter, actually help shepherd the inner planets, it ends up elongating the inner planets' orbits, which would dramatically change things for life on Earth.
It's almost like taking a baseball bat to the Earth, the rogue planet being the bat, and just the force from this planet will be so great that you just change the path of the Earth just in the same way that a bat can change the path of the baseball on its way to the catcher's glove.
And if Earth's orbit were elongated just enough to swing outside the habitable zone, our very survival could be at stake.
The habitable zone, as we understand it in any star system, is defined by what we call the triple point of water. You find water in all three phases: liquid, solid, and gas. And so far as we know, you need that in order for life to be able to survive. And when you start making Earth's orbit more elliptical, you start touching the fringes of this habitable zone where it could be a little warm for all three phases or a little cool for all three phases. We're still there, but it doesn't take much to shove a planet's climate over the edge and either make it a super hot Venus or lead it to a very cold Mars.
Since there has never been an encounter with a rogue planet in recorded history, scientists are unsure of how the event would play out.
So we really can't know with great certainty what is going to happen if a rogue planet comes into our solar system. We can run computer models, we can make educated guesses, but at this point it's a purely hypothetical phenomenon.
Here is one possible scenario. A rogue planet suddenly appears on the fringes of our solar system. As the rogue streaks past the outer planets, the whole solar system begins to change. The rogue's gravitational pull alters the orbit of Jupiter. Jupiter, in turn, pulls the Earth out of its nearly circular orbit to an elliptical orbit.
If it passed near the Earth, then the Earth's orbit would be changed almost instantaneously.
This new orbit takes the Earth as close to the Sun as Venus and as far out as Mars. Although we still remain in the habitable zone in this new elliptical orbit, our climate would begin to alter drastically. For most, the change is so gradual that at first, it's hardly noticed. The days grow longer and the nights get colder, but life goes on as before. But over the next few months, a slow-motion global disaster begins to unfold.
There's a common misconception that the Earth's seasons are driven by our distance either toward or away from the sun, where summer is when the Earth is closest to the sun and winter is when it's farthest away. That's not true. Right now, it's the Earth's tilt that causes summer and winter. So when your side of the planet's facing toward the sun, it's summer. And when your side of the planet's facing away, it's winter.
The entire planet would have summer at the same time because it's very close to the sun, and then the entire planet then experiences winter at the same time when you're farthest away from the sun.
So the Earth would enter a new climate phase where you would have short but intense summers and then very long winters.
So life on Earth is very much dependent on the orbit we are in around the sun.
The shift in our seasons would wreak havoc on Earth's agriculture, resulting in a shorter growing period and eventually mass food shortages.
The effect could be very dramatic and really affect the prospects of life on Earth. If we're very unlucky, it could end life on Earth.
As the climate catastrophe continues, the Earth struggles to adapt, and the worst is yet to come. Imagine that a rogue planet has suddenly passed through our solar system and alters the Earth's orbit. A new elliptical path draws us closer to the sun, and a climate catastrophe ensues. World temperatures would increase dramatically. Runaway global warming causes ice caps and glaciers to melt, raising the sea levels around the world by 3 feet or more.
Now, 3 or 4 feet of sea level rise may not seem like a lot. Let's think about Lower Manhattan, New York City. It's protected by a seawall, which is about 5 feet high at average tide. And at high tide, the tide is about 2 feet below the top of that seawall. Now, if you're adding 3 or 4 feet on top of that, now you've got the ocean in New York City, in the subway system, and the financial district without a storm even being present.
With just a few feet of sea level rise, you have a lot of problems because most of the major cities of the world are built on or near the ocean. And they're designed with infrastructure such as subway systems, for example, or sewer systems that are not designed to handle more than a foot or two of sea level rise. And so when you have those first few feet, it causes major costs. But then when you go beyond that, you're talking about cities literally disappearing off the map. But if we warm the planet significantly more, let's say 10 degrees, then you're talking about all of Greenland and all of Antarctica melting. When they're all melted, you're going to have 250 feet of sea level rise, which is literally wiping most of the major cities off the map totally.
With much of the coastal areas flooded, hundreds of millions of people would be forced to move inland, away from the ocean and the rising temperatures.
Basically, all the habitable areas as they are now would tend to shift away from this increasingly hot equatorial region up north to preserve the way of life as we have it.
The migration would tax life support systems and stretch government infrastructures around the world to the breaking point.
One of the biggest impacts that a big climate change or a shift like that would cause is agriculture would stop. Food is effectively governed by a seasonal pattern that we take for granted. And if that goes away, then you can imagine a scenario where we don't have enough food to feed the population. Economy breaks down, and that would actually become more dangerous to society than the actual climate change that we would experience.
But the worst is not over. Environmental effects from a rogue planet would continue to be felt across the globe.
It wouldn't be just one area of the planet which would be affected by these sorts of phenomena. The whole planet would suffer during the summertime when the planet was closest to the sun. You'd have incredible heat waves, incredible droughts over the entire planet.
More areas become arid, with large sand and dust storms blanketing cities and making it dangerous for people to leave their houses.
You might find entire populations walking outside with respirators on all the time just because it's so dusty.
And temperatures of 140 degrees would threaten our very survival.
Once the temperature reaches 130 degrees, you can't survive that. You can't sweat fast enough to cool your body. And if you're outside without air conditioning, then you're just going to die.
And with the Earth's orbit altered and the planet closer to the sun, deadly wildfires are just a lightning strike away. Massive firestorms would devastate thousands of square miles of forests and grasslands.
You're going to have problems not only with drought, you're also going to have wildfires, because any vegetation that's cooking in that kind of heat is going to be highly dried out and subject to bursting into flame.
But it's not just extreme heat that threatens us. It's also the cold, a new ice age, as the catastrophe continues. Imagine the gravitational impact of a rogue planet has altered the Earth's orbit, causing it to be much more elliptical. This shift would have a drastic effect on the weather. Runaway, supercharged global warming, leading to floods, droughts, widespread wildfires, and extreme swings in temperature. Ironically, the global warming caused by the new altered orbit could cause certain areas to freeze over.
One of the big misconceptions about global warming is that every place on the planet gets hotter all at once. Well, that's not true. The climate system is much more complex than that. So when you add more heat to the system, there are all sorts of feedback mechanisms that start to kick in. Like when you heat the water, it becomes water vapor. Well, water vapor makes clouds, and clouds reflect all the sunlight back to space. Well, that is going to have a cooling effect. So it's very likely that you could have areas of the Earth get much colder while other areas get much hotter. One potential effect of global warming is that Britain ices over. You have a new ice age at the same time that you get massive droughts in the U.S.
Some scientists fear that global warming could also lead to a shutdown of the thermohaline circulation, a giant conveyor belt that distributes warm and cold water around the globe.
Think of it as a tractor in the ocean that's carrying cold water from the Arctic and forcing warm water up from the tropics. And what that does is it cools down the equatorial region and heats up the Arctic.
Now, if that circulation were to change because of the substantial differences in Earth's orbit, then you would have a situation where Europe would have a much different climate, and North America as well, because a lot of heat gets transported by ocean currents.
A shutdown of the thermohaline circulation could accelerate global warming as the polar ice caps continue to melt. Very cold air mixes with warmer air. Tropical storms could become stronger, and more frequent superstorms would be born. The constantly hot equatorial zone will produce more water vapor in the air, which could lead to larger and more frequent cyclones and hurricanes.
That's going to cause flooding when you do happen to have a situation where you've got rain falling. So both drought and storms are going to get worse with a very hot planet like that.
And if ocean temperatures were to rise above 115 degrees Fahrenheit, we could face a special breed of superstorm called a hypercane.
Now, that is a type of hurricane/tornado that gets to a wind speed of 500 miles per hour. It's been theoretically shown that if you heat up a large enough area of the ocean, say maybe 50 or 100 miles in diameter, to a temperature of 115 degrees, you could get one of these theoretical storms that go way up in the upper stratosphere and cause incredible destruction wherever they hit. A hypercane you could think of as a tornado on steroids or a hurricane on steroids, kind of a cross between the two, much more powerful than either, which would destroy any structure in its way.
This climate catastrophe projection might seem like a worst-case scenario. But if a rogue planet did alter the Earth's orbit, many scientists believe we would have something much bigger to fear. It's possible that the Earth itself could become a rogue planet.
The Earth's orbit would change by a larger and larger amount, and the Earth might eventually get ejected from the solar system and become a rogue planet itself.
The Earth itself wouldn't be destroyed, it would remain intact. But as we went farther and farther away from the sun, the surface would cool and the atmosphere would freeze, and if we had any chance of survival, we would have to dig down into or toward the mantle where the radioactive elements are keeping the Earth's core hot, and we would become subsurface dwellers in order to survive. To us on Earth, it would look like the nights would get longer and longer, the days would get fainter, till eventually it's perpetual night. And the sun becomes just a bright star in the starry night sky, and that's it for the rest of time.
These doomsday scenarios may seem like the stuff of science fiction, but with billions of rogue planets wandering through space, the threat is real. Luckily, scientists around the world are developing the tools necessary to spot these rogue planets long before they arrive in our solar system.
Disasters have wiped out the planet before.
We know that these things are a threat. We know they're going to hit again.
Nothing lasts forever. Forecasting the end. Next on the Weather Channel.
What if a rogue planet streaks through the solar system and pulls the Earth into an elliptical orbit, causing an environmental disaster? This new orbit would generate extreme weather events that threaten the very survival of the human race. In an attempt to combat this potential catastrophe, scientists are scanning the skies in hopes of detecting these rogue planets before they become a threat.
We use mainly two telescopes, one for the discovery itself. It has a very good wide field capability.
This telescope, known as the CFH, or the Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope, is located atop the summit of Mauna Kea in Hawaii and is one of the most advanced of its kind in the world.
And then for the spectroscopy, we went to the VLT. So that's really a cutting-edge telescope. Then you see the chemical composition. So we're not just seeing a little point moving, we're seeing really the composition of the object.
These VLTs, or very large telescopes, consist of 4 individual scopes and operate at both visual and infrared wavelengths. They are capable of detecting objects 4 billion times fainter than can be seen by the naked eye.
So these are really massive telescopes, and they gather data, and then you spend a lot of time, usually years, analyzing the data.
Etienne and his team have been successful in finding hundreds of rogue planets, but one planet in particular stands out among the rest.
So this planet was discovered as we were looking for failed stars. It's about the same diameter as Jupiter, so a bit more than 10 times the size of the Earth.
We didn't know if there were other planets out there or if planets were common. Now we know that planets are common, and we've found more than 800 with a possibility of 2,000 now, and that number is only going to get bigger as our telescopes get better.
In principle, a rogue planet could enter our solar system, and if it does enter and if it comes close, that disrupts the orbit. Of course, it can have catastrophic impacts, ultimately to wipe out the biosphere.
Fortunately, astronomers have yet to spot any rogue planets headed our way. Our ever-evolving technological advancements and understanding of space has also shown us how delicate the balance of life really is, and that our orbit, at least for now, is in a perfect position.
Here in the 21st century, we live in kind of a Goldilocks zone for life on Earth. It's not too hot or too cold here. So let's work on keeping us right in the Goldilocks zone. We don't want to move too far on either side. It's not so good for civilization and life on Earth.
A catastrophic event is about to take place in a matter of days. I'm strongly urging everyone to take what I'm about to tell you very seriously. If you do not understand what I'm saying, keep watching till you do. Because if you turn away from this video, you will regret it dearly. The Earth is being rocked with a strong magnetic pulse that is devastating all the beings in it. And it's about to get 1,000 times worse. Here's how this magnetic pulse is affecting us as...
Since electricity and magnetism are really just two forms of the same thing, a magnet can affect the electrical signals in your brain. Now this is your brain. It's basically an electric web of billions of neurons wired together. When a strong magnetic pulse hits these neurons, it alters their electric current. The process is called transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS.
Electricity is the currency of the brain. All thoughts, all beliefs, all actions are just electrical impulses. And so TMS, we're actually able to get in there and influence the currency of the brain focally and non-invasively.
The stronger the magnetic pulse, the deeper into the brain it goes. And by adjusting the pattern of the pulse, you can change the way that part of the brain functions.
You can turn a part of the brain up or down, or temporarily turn it off, or temporarily turn it off, or temporarily turn it off.
This magnetic field is having an effect on Earth as we speak. These cars are being lifted in the air due to this magnetic field. And you and everything you know will be lifted in a moment. You hear a lot of people talking about the rapture, and you're trying to understand what are they talking about. Raptured, lifted, you know. It's a magnetic pulse from a planet that is coming, and I'm going to explain a little bit to you about this planet that is coming. The government knows all about this planet. This planet been here since the days of Sodom and Gomorrah and the days of Noah, and each civilization was destroyed by this planet. This planet, it caused severe weather patterns, unprecedented. And when this planet comes close to our planet, it changes our planet to evil, because when God designed the universe, He designed this evil planet to come to the evil. Galatians 6:7. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, he will also reap. If man becomes evil on this planet and makes this planet an evil planet, he shall also reap an evil planet. An evil planet is on its way. Psalm 7:16. The trouble they cause recoils on them. It comes down on you. Their violence comes down on their own heads. So this planet affects the minds. It is killing animals. Animals are dying off. The fish is dying off. It is disrupting the whole planet.
Another small life lost on the vast Kazakh grasslands. Officials estimate that in the last 2 weeks as many as 12,000 Saiga antelope have died.
No one can understand what's happened because we see dead animals concentrated in a certain area.
The government is baffled.
This phenomenon took place not only in the area where mass death of Saiga antelope took place, it also happened in another district some time ago where strange white fog was seen.
As their numbers plummet once again, this graceful sight is becoming ever rarer.
These are the signs of God. And as this planet moves closer, it is throwing off red iron oxide, evil red iron oxide. oxide, which is affecting the minds of the animals, the humans, and the whole entire planet with its strong, evil magnetic field. As the magnetic field affects the earth and the minds of the people, they become more evil, and violence is about to break out to a scale unprecedented, never seen before in the history of mankind. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places, and all these are the beginnings of sorrow.
Coming at you live from Gilbert, Arizona, Southeast Phoenix. This is unedited footage of the sunset. Are you serious?
Now, as this planet approaches our planet, it lets off iron oxide. It has a meteor tail, 3 million miles long. And this meteor tail, every time this planet turns and swerves and goes around something, it spreads out like wings. And those wings will be a sign of the return of Christ. It will be a sign. And I just said it, what is going to be a sign. Those wings are going to spread out, and it's going to have a long tail, and it's going to look like Jesus Christ on the cross. This prophecy stated that if man did not turn from evil and place himself at the feet of God, the planet would self-destruct, and the events described in the book of Revelations would indeed come to pass. This is your final warning. If you did not hear anything that anyone has been telling you, at least hear this. Your doom is coming. The planet will be rising. The two magnetic fields is coming into each other, and they will pull on this earth in such a way that you have never seen ever in life. If you are not straight with God, you better get yourself straight. The end of this world is right here at hand. And it's going to be like in the days of Noah. It's going to be like in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, you have an ounce of time. Days. So I'll do a quick recap. The iron oxide from this evil planet is causing an effect on the minds of the people. And as the planet gets closer, it's going to get worse and worse. The police, you think they're bad now, they're going to be 1,000% worse. It's going to wreak havoc. So World War III is going to start. It's going to affect the minds, this magnetic pulse, this field, you know, and it's going to affect animals and everything like never before. So you should be ready to go. And I'm not talking about world ready. I'm not talking about prepper ready. I'm talking about God ready. Because this planet is going to be destroyed. It's done. And you can be deceived by the beast at this time. The elections is going to go horrible. Everything is going to go bad. This is Venezuela right here. Everything is about to go bad. You know, and basically people are getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And just think about people who are already on mental medications. You know, it is time to get yourself out of the city. It is time to flee to the mountains. It is time to set your teepee out in the wilderness. If you ain't understanding what I'm saying, then you will not. Turn off the video. Go to hell. If you do
And just because the world is now inhabited by humans who are living in a modern technological age, well, this doesn't mean that a major pole shift is outside the realm of possibility in our lifetimes. It is, however, conceivable that we are now in the initial stage of the pole shift that Edgar Cayce envisioned. and that which Albert Einstein had acknowledged would occur. So we can speculate as to why we are witnessing these sudden changes on our planet and what might be causing these changes, but the facts do speak for themselves as to exactly what is happening at this time. Some of you keep insisting that we show irrefutable evidence that the Earth is being turned upside down, and that a rogue planet in our solar system is responsible for the Earth shifting on its axis, which is a belief now held by the Inuit elders who have observed the skies and the sun for a generation. Then there are others of you who claim that we have been saying for the last 15 years that Planet X would be coming. Well, all we can tell you is that we have been waiting for 3,600 years for its return. A planet which is 5 times the size of Earth, that moves in a retrograde orbit. This isn't going to be the type of planet that travels at a rapid pace across our solar system. Then again, if the planet were visible to the naked eye, would you then believe? We will tell you this, that the world is beginning to see a period of great tribulation, and the arrival of Planet X may come much sooner than any of us would have imagined. Now, we are not trying to be fear-mongers or alarmists. There are already too many of them out there. We are just trying to present common sense evidence to the public. So here are some of the things we know for sure. Earth changes are increasing dramatically worldwide. In fact, since 2012, earthquake and volcanic activity has risen on a phenomenal level. Volcanoes are approaching 40 eruptions per day. That's right. Hard to believe, but true. Earthquakes in the Ring of Fire are more frequent and are occurring in unusual areas where people are not accustomed to them. So first off, let's examine the details of the unprecedented earthquakes happening in 2016. The earthquake activity along the Pacific Ring of Fire has been nothing short of unprecedented. From coast to coast, there have been a surge of activity that earthquake researchers are taking note of at this time. On February the 16th of 2016, a report from stuff.co.nz reported a 6.0 magnitude earthquake, which was felt as far south as Dunedin. Now, coincidentally, this earthquake was shown as a magnitude 5.9 on the EMSC website, which would be different from what was shown on the GeoNet site. There have been a number of recent earthquakes taking place in New Zealand that range in magnitude of 4.3 down to 3.6. And then, of course, the 6.0 that was just recently recorded. But of all the earthquakes 3.0 or greater that were shallow in depth, this is a spike in activity that is more dangerous because the tremors are happening near the surface. The earthquake activity that has been recorded on the RSOE website is from the last 2 days alone, which is also very alarming. With the Alpine Fault overdue for a major quake and the amount of activity taking place at the moment, we feel it is wise for New Zealanders to be ready. We should also note that California is continuing to experience tremors with some rare earthquakes recently, along with several smaller earthquakes all taking place within the last few days. Now, moving down to South America, there has been a spike in earthquake activity in the past 24 hours, measuring in the magnitude of 4.8 down to 3.6. Now, this is a signal for pressure building up along these plates, and that pressure has to release at some point in time. Which in turn is contributing to the extreme earth and climate changes that are having such a profound effect upon our planet at this time. We often get numerous comments from viewers and occasionally from our subscribers that earth and climate changes are just part of the natural process of a world that is continuously changing. And this has been true in some respects throughout our existence. But what we are now experiencing across the globe in the way of extreme weather events and also catastrophic earth changes, they go beyond the scope of natural occurrences. They are becoming unprecedented in nature. In one of our recent videos, we presented an article from National Geographic, which indicates that scientists now believe that climate change is causing the poles to shift at an accelerated rate. But if you really take the time to analyze the data and study the facts, wouldn't it make more sense to conclude that it is actually the shifting poles that are causing the sudden change in the world's climate? You might ask, how is that so? And so we would ask to you, go back and look at the history of the world. There has in fact been a number of pole shifts throughout the existence of this planet. If you take a look at this chart, you will see that fireball events were recorded as in the hundreds per year in the year 2005. By 2011, there had been over 1,500 reports of fireballs. And since that time, it has dramatically increased to where in the year 2015, there were over 9,000 reports of fireballs. Now, it's interesting to note that the frequency of fireballs has increased by 120% between the years 2013 and 2014, and has risen another 20% between the years 2014 and 2015. Now, this is a significant increase, and it should be generating a lot of attention, but if it is, then it's being done very quietly behind closed doors. Now, looking at NASA's data month by month, we see that the fireball frequency is most concentrated in the months of August to December. However, the numbers for June and July are also increasing significantly, suggesting that the area of space from which asteroid and comet debris is reaching Earth, and consequently into which the solar system is moving, is increasing in size. NASA has also published data for near-Earth asteroids, or